The Alien Academy Hall was alive with noise. Young cadets from different species filled the wide chamber, their voices rising like waves against the stone walls. Screens floated in the air, showing history lessons, maps of past battles, and the faces of ancient warriors. Yet most cadets were not paying attention. They were laughing. They were laughing at humans dying. It always happened when the subject of humanity came up. Among the great empires of the galaxy, humans were considered strange, even pathetic. Fragile bodies, short lifespans, primitive weapons compared to the advanced technology of others, and yet, there were so many legends about them. Legends of warriors who fought against impossible odds. Legends of survivors who stood when no one else could dock to the cadets. Those stories were jokes. A young blue-skinned cadet slapped his desk and laughed loudly. And then the story says, a single human held the pass for 3 days against an entire enemy battalion. 3 days? Impossible. He would have been crushed in 3 minutes. His friends burst into laughter. Another cadet added, or the one where a human ship rammed an enemy cruiser. Who makes these lies? Why destroy your own ship? Madness. The laughter spread through the hall. Claws tapped desks. Tails swished with amusement. For them, human legends were entertainment, not history. But not everyone was laughing. At the far end of the hall sat a figure who did not join in. He was older than the others, much older. His face carried deep lines, and his skin bore the marks of old burns. One eye was cybernetic, glowing faintly red, while the other remained dark and tired. His uniform was simple, but his chest carried medals no one else in the hall recognized. His arms were scarred, and his hands looked like they had held weapons for a lifetime. He was human. The cadets barely noticed him most days. To them, he was just an old veteran assigned to the academy, a guest speaker no one cared about. They assumed he was retired, weak, unimportant. But as the laughter about humans grew louder, his one good eye slowly lifted. He looked at the cadets, silent, like a shadow that had been waiting for its moment. The teacher, a tall alien with long horns, raised his hand. Quiet, class, quiet. The voices lowered, but chuckles still echoed. The teacher gave a small smile. I see you all enjoy the human legends. But remember, every species writes stories to make themselves appear greater. Do not take them too seriously. Another wave of laughter followed. That was when the old veteran finally stood. The sound was small at first, the scrape of a chair against the floor, but it silenced the hall. The cadets turned, surprised that the scarred human had moved. He rarely spoke. He never joined the discussions. And yet now, his figure seemed larger than before, as if the weight of memory made him tower over them all. He stepped forward slowly, his boots heavy against the floor. Every step echoed. The hall fell completely silent. When he reached the center, he stopped. His cybernetic eye scanned the room. His real eye burned with something far older than anger. You laugh. His voice was low, rough, like stones grinding. Together, because you do not know, the cadets froze. None dared to interrupt. You think our legends are myths. You think our battles are lies, but I was there. His hand lifted slowly, pointing at his own chest. I saw them. I fought beside them. I carry their voices still. His words hung in the air like heavy chains. The cadets shifted uncomfortably. Some smirked nervously, as if it was still a joke. But most felt something colder creeping through. Their bodies, the way the humans spoke. It did not sound like a man inventing stories. It sounded like a man carrying ghosts. The veteran turned, his gaze sweeping across the hall. You want to know the truth about humans? You want to understand why our legends live? No one answered. He leaned closer, his voice dropping until it was almost a whisper. Then listen. Listen, and I will tell you. But once you hear it, you will never laugh again. The teacher shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Even he wanted to know. The old human straightened, his scars visible in the glowing light of the floating screens. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if he was standing again on some distant battlefield. When he opened them, his gaze was sharp, unshakable. It began, he said, with a war that no one thought humans would survive. The cadets leaned forward without realizing it. The veteran continued, his voice slow, deliberate. Our enemies outnumbered us 50-1. Their fleets blotted out the stars. Their soldiers carried weapons that could burn cities in a breath. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to kneel. He paused, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly brighter. But we did not kneel. We never kneel. The words hit the cadets like a strike. The veteran's hand tightened into a fist. You laugh at our stories of soldiers holding the line, but I saw it. I saw men and women fight with broken rifles, with empty guns, with nothing but their hands and teeth. I saw them bleed and fall, and still rise again. One cadet muttered nervously, That is not possible." The veteran turned his gaze on him, and the cadet's voice died instantly. "Not possible?" The veteran said slowly, "Do you know what humans do when the impossible stands before them? We don't run, we charge." The hall was silent. Every cadet stared at him now, their earlier laughter buried under unease. The veteran's voice grew heavier, filled with memory. "Our legends are not stories, they are scars, they are graves. They are the truth of what it means to be human." He stepped back, breathing deeply, as if even speaking those words pulled pain from deep inside him. Then he looked around the hall one last time. "You wanted entertainment," he said softly. "Instead, you will hear the truth. I will tell you of battles that burned the skies. I will tell you of soldiers who fought when hope was gone. I will tell you why humans are feared." His gaze locked with the teachers. "And when I am done, you will not laugh again." The cadets shifted in their seats. Some swallowed nervously, some looked away. But none dared speak. The veteran nodded slowly, almost to himself. Then he sat down again, his back straight, his eyes burning with the weight of old wars. The silence in the hall was suffocating, for the first time. The cadets did not see human legends as jokes. For the first time they wanted to hear more, and the veteran was ready to tell them. The hall remained silent long after the old human veteran had spoken. The cadets sat stiff, their earlier laughter now replaced with unease. The teacher's horns twitched nervously, but even he could not find words. Everyone waited, eyes fixed on the scarred man. The veteran leaned back slowly, as if steadying himself. His voice came again, low and rough. "You want to know why our legends live? You want to know why we are remembered, even when empires forget their own heroes?" Number one answered, but every cadet leaned forward, unable to stop themselves. "Then listen," the veteran said. "Listen, and I will tell you of the battle where the galaxy first learned to fear humans." The forgotten war. He began to speak, and as he did, the academy hall seemed to fade. In the cadets' minds, his words painted another world dark, burning, broken. "It was the war against the Krell Dominion," the veteran said. "You do not know their name now. They are dust. But once, they ruled half the stars. They had fleets larger than the skies themselves, and armies that devoured planets. Against them, humanity was nothing. Small colonies, fragile ships, no allies. Everyone believed we would be erased." A cadet whispered, "Then how did you survive?" The veteran's cybernetic eye turned toward him. "By refusing to die." He continued, his voice steady. "The Krell struck our colonies first. Cities burned. Families were slaughtered. They thought fear would break us. But fear is what made us fight harder." The stand at Vela Ridge. The veteran's gaze grew distant, as though he was watching ghosts rise before him. "I was there," he said softly. "At Vela Ridge, a barren world of ash and rock, the Krell sent an army of 20,000 soldiers. We had barely 400 humans, farmers, miners, a few soldiers like me. We had no tanks, no heavy guns, only rifles and explosives. We built from scrap, the cadets gasped. 400 against 20,000? Yes, the veteran said. And yet, we stood. He leaned forward, his voice growing stronger. We dug trenches into the black stone. We laid traps in the dust. We used every hill, every crack, every shadow. And when the Krell came, roaring and armored, we did not run. The hall seemed to hold its breath. I remember the first charge, he whispered. The ground shook like thunder. The sky turned red with their fire. My hands trembled. But beside me stood a boy no older than 16, holding a rifle too heavy for him. He looked at me and smiled. The veteran's voice cracked for a moment, then steadied. We opened fire, and the ridge burned. Human madness, the cadets stared, unable to look away. The veteran's words carried them into the battle. The Krell expected us to break in minutes. But we fought for hours. When our rifles overheated, we threw stones. When our grenades were gone, we used knives. When the knives broke, we used our fists, and still we did not fall. He looked at the young aliens, his one living eye hard. You laugh at our stories of soldiers fighting with bare hands. But I saw it. I saw a woman lose her arm, yet she bit into the throat of a Krell until it fell. I saw men who should have been dead stand again, just to take one more enemy with them. The cadets shivered. To them, war was distant, fought with drones and machines. The idea of such close, brutal combat was alien to their minds. Why? One cadet whispered without meaning to. Why would anyone fight like that? Why not retreat? The veteran's gaze locked on him. Because there was nowhere to run. And because humans do not surrender. Not when our homes burn. Not when our families die. Not when we are told the battle is lost. That is when we fight hardest. The turning point, the veteran closed his eyes briefly, as if hearing the echoes of that battlefield. When he opened them, his voice lowered. By the second day, half of us were dead. By the third, only 100 remained. The Krell laughed as they came. They thought it was over. But they did not understand what it meant to face humans with nothing left to lose. His voice grew sharper. That night, our commander stood before us. He said, "We hold this ridge, or humanity dies." And then he smiled. Smiled when death was certain. That is who we are. The cadets exchanged uneasy looks. Who smiled at death? The veteran continued, his tone rising. We launched a counterattack. Broken, starving, bleeding, and still we charged. We used the night, the dust, the shadows. We struck where they did not expect. Every explosion lit the sky, and every scream of theirs gave us strength. He leaned closer. We should have died. We should have fallen. But by the end of the 5th day, the Krell pulled back. 20,000 against a handful of humans, and they pulled back. The hall gasped. The veteran's voice grew harsh. Do you understand? They could not crush us. They feared us. And that fear spread across the stars. Cadets' reactions. The hall was silent, but the silence was different now. It was heavy, suffocating. The cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their earlier laughter felt like shame burning in their throats. One cadet whispered, This cannot be true. 400 cannot stop 20,000. The veteran's good eye locked on him. You think so? Look at me. Do these scars look like lies? The cadet swallowed and said nothing more. Another cadet raised a trembling hand. But you lost so many. Was it worth it? The veteran's gaze softened just for a moment. Every death bought one more day for our people to live. Every sacrifice kept the fire of humanity burning. Was it worth it? Yes, because we are alive today to remember them. The hall grew quiet again. No one dared laugh. No one dared look away at the veteran's warning. The veteran leaned back, his voice slowing. That was only the beginning. Vela Ridge was the first battle where the galaxy saw what humans could do. But it was not the last. Our legends grew because we never stopped fighting. We never stopped bleeding. We never stopped rising again, no matter how many times they tried to break us. His cybernetic eye glowed faintly brighter. You think our legends are myths, but I carry them here. He pressed a scarred hand against his chest. Every name, every face, every scream. I carry them. And when I die, another will carry them. Still, the cadets sat frozen. The air felt colder. The veteran's words sank into them like blades. Then he leaned forward once more, his voice dropping low. And this was only one battle. You want to hear more? You want to know why our enemies feared us? The cadet swallowed. No one laughed now. No one dared dismiss him. Slowly, almost against their will, they nodded. The veteran gave a grim smile, the kind that carried no joy. Good, he said softly, because the story is just beginning. What came next was far worse. The hall remained silent, but the silence was no longer disbelief. It was fear. And the cadets, who once mocked human legends, now leaned forward eagerly, dreading and yet needing to hear the truth. The veteran's voice, scarred by war, was ready to take them deeper into the nightmare. The hall was silent again, but the silence was heavy with fear and curiosity. The cadets no longer dared to laugh. They no longer dared to whisper jokes about human myths. Now they sat stiff, eyes wide, waiting for the scarred veteran to continue. Old Human leaned forward, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly as he looked across the young alien faces. You have heard of Vela Ridge, he said. 400 humans against 20,000 Krell. You thought that was impossible, but I told you it was only the beginning. His voice grew deeper, rougher, carrying weight. Now I will tell you of the darkest battle. A battle where even I believed we were finished. Where every breath was stolen from us, and yet, somehow, we still stood. The cadets shifted uneasily, their bodies tense. The teacher said nothing, though his hands tightened behind his back. The siege of Eridan Prime, the veteran's gaze grew distant, as if his mind was traveling back through years of scars. It happened at Eridan Prime, he began. One of our strongest colonies. A shining city of steel towers and wide domes. Families lived there. Children played under the glass sky. It was home. He paused, his jaw tightening. The Krell came for it with everything they had. 50 warships, thousands of troops. They wanted to erase humanity once and for all. And this time, there was no ridge, no trench, no place to hide, just a city. A city full of civilians who had nowhere to run. The cadets frowned. For them, civilians were always evacuated before war reached them. They could not imagine fighting with families trapped behind the walls. The veteran's voice grew sharp. We had barely 1,000 soldiers to defend them. The rest were farmers, miners, workers, but we could not leave. To abandon Eridan Prime was to abandon our people, and humans do not abandon their own. The first night, the veteran's words painted the scene. The sky burned with fire as the Krell fleet struck. Buildings collapsed. The ground split. Children screamed. We rushed to defend the city walls, but their cannons tore through our shields. It was chaos, pure chaos. He took a slow breath, his one good eye darkening. I remember the first night. We were outnumbered 50-1. The Krell poured into the streets. Their soldiers were armored beasts, each one stronger than 3 men. We fought in the alleys, in the rubble, in the burning homes. Blood ran like rivers through the city. The cadets sat frozen, the image vivid in their minds. But the civilians, they did not run. They carried ammo. They built barricades. A mother held a rifle beside her child. Old men threw fire from windows. Even those who could not fight stood. The Krell expected easy prey. Instead, they found a city that bit back. Desperation and madness. The veteran's voice grew harsher. By the second day, we were running out of everything. Ammo, food, even water. And still, the Krell came. I remember holding a broken rifle, swinging it like a club. I remember seeing a boy older than 12 stab a Krell with a kitchen blade. Madness, you think? Maybe, but that madness bought us ours. The cadets shivered. The thought of children fighting, of mothers with rifles, it was not war as they understood it. It was survival turned into fire. One cadet whispered, "That is horrifying." The veteran's gaze snapped to him. Yes, war is horrifying, and humans, we do not run from horror. We walk through it. The turning point. He leaned forward, his voice lowering. By the third night, we were finished. Only a few hundred of us remained. The Krell broke through the walls. Their flag burned over the city center. We gathered for what we thought was our last stand. The cadets leaned closer, their breaths caught. Our commander stood tall in the ruins. His uniform was torn, his face bleeding, but his eyes burned. He said, "If this is the end, let it be the end that will be remembered. Let the Krell choke on our bones." The cadets flinched at the words. To them, such defiance sounded insane. The veteran's voice grew sharp, fierce. And so we charged. Hundreds of starving, bleeding humans against thousands of armored beasts. We had no ships left, no cannons, no hope. But we charged. He slammed his scarred fist against the table, and the cadets jumped. "I remember the moment," he whispered. "I remember seeing my friend, his chest torn open, still running forward. I remember a woman with no legs firing until her last breath. I remember the Krell looking at us. And for the first time, they hesitated. The Krell's fear. The cadets' eyes widened. They hesitated. The veteran nodded slowly. Yes, because they did not understand. No species they had ever fought refused to surrender. No enemy charged into death with a smile. They saw us bleed and still rise. They saw us broken and still fight. And in that moment, they feared. His cybernetic eye glowed faintly brighter. Fear is powerful. Fear spreads. That night, the Krell commanders ordered retreat. They pulled back, afraid of a handful of dying humans. The cadets gasped. The teacher's eyes narrowed, but even he looked shaken. The veteran leaned closer, his voice cutting like steel. That is why our legends live, not because we are the strongest, not because we are the smartest, but because when death comes, for us we do not bow, we rise, again and again, until even our enemies wonder if killing us is possible at all. The weight of memory. The hall was silent again, but the silence was no longer disbelief. It was heavy with respect, with unease. The cadets shifted in their seats, unable to escape the weight of the human's words. One cadet whispered, "But how did you survive?" The veteran's gaze softened for the first time. Not many of us did. I carry the faces of the ones who fell. I see them every night. Their voices do not leave me. That is the price of survival. The cadets swallowed hard. None dared laugh now. None dared call human legends lies. The veteran's final words for the day. The old human leaned back slowly, his scarred hands resting on the table. His voice dropped to a low growl. "You have heard of Valor Ridge. You have heard of Eridan Prime. And still, you sit there, thinking perhaps we were lucky. That perhaps it was chance. But I tell you this." He paused, his one good eye burning into theirs. "It was not luck. It was not chance. It was who we are. And what you heard today was only one shadow of the truth." The cadets leaned forward, hearts racing. The veteran nodded once, almost to himself. The darkest battle was not Eridan Prime. There was worse. Much worse. A war where even the galaxy itself trembled. He stood slowly, his scars catching the light. "And I will tell you of it, if you are ready." The cadets sat frozen. Fear and curiosity battled in their eyes. They had mocked humans once. Now they wanted to hear every word. The old human turned away, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "Next time, I will show you what it truly means when humanity refuses to fall." The hall remained silent long after he left. The cadets did not laugh anymore. They did not whisper. They only sat in the heavy air, their minds filled with the images of humans charging into death with fire in their eyes. And for the first time, they began to understand why human legends lived. The classroom was no longer filled with laughter. The young alien cadets, who once mocked human stories, now sat silent. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. They were no longer mocking. They were listening. Every word from the old human veteran carried weight heavier than any book they had read. The scars on his face glowed under the dim lights. His voice was rough, but it cut through the silence like a blade. He stood tall, even with his limp. His eyes carried the memories of 1,000 battles. He began slowly, almost as if speaking to ghosts. "Do you think human legends are fairy tales?" he asked. His gaze swept across the rows of alien cadets. None dared to answer. The room was still, only the hum of the academy walls in the background. The veteran placed his hand on his chest, where his jacket was worn and torn. Then, with deliberate care, he unfastened the old straps and pulled something from inside. The cadets leaned forward. Their hearts pounded. It was a medal. The metal was scratched, burned, and stained. But it was not just any metal. It was covered in blood dried, dark, and ancient. "This," the veteran said, holding it high, "belonged to a man who died in my arms. They call him a legend now, but I knew him. I fought beside him. He was no myth. He was flesh and blood." The cadets gasped softly. Some shivered. The veteran closed his eyes and spoke again. "He was my friend. We were trapped during the siege of Caro's Hold, outnumbered 50-1. No reinforcements, no escape. The enemy had plasma cannons and ships. We had rifles with dying power cells. Still, he smiled. Still, he fought. And when the last barricade fell, he gave me this medal and ran straight into the enemy line with nothing but a grenade. He died, but his sacrifice saved everyone else. They tell his story now as a legend, but I saw him. I touched his blood. His courage was real. The cadets were frozen in their seats. None could laugh now. None dared. One young alien, with trembling voice, asked, Why would he do that? Why would a human throw his life away?" The veteran's eyes burned with fire. Because he was human. And because humans do not fight only for victory. They fight for each other. They fight so that someone else may live. You mock our legends because you do not understand. But legends are not lies. They are memories of real sacrifice. He stepped forward, closer to the rows of cadets. His footsteps echoed in the silent hall. Humans bleed. Humans break. But they do not stop. That is why our stories sound impossible to you. Because in your world, surrender is natural. Retreat is expected. But to us, surrender is worse than death. The cadet's eyes flickered with unease. One whispered, "But the galaxy says humans were reckless, that they wasted lives." The veteran slammed his fist against the desk, making everyone flinch. His voice thundered. "Reckless? No, we endured wars you cannot even imagine. Do you know what it means to fight with no food, no air in your lungs, and still rise? Again, do you know what it means to carry your friend's body for miles because you refuse to leave him behind? That is not recklessness. That is loyalty. That is strength. That is humanity." His hand shook as he raised the medal again. They call him a myth, but his scream still echoes in my ears. His fire still burns in my heart. He was real. They all were. Silence swallowed the room. Even the arrogant cadets who once mocked humans now looked ashamed. Their eyes no longer carried laughter, only fear. And respect. The veteran's voice softened. He looked at the metal, then at the young faces before him. Your kind tells stories of monsters. But you do not understand. The galaxy's monsters are not beasts. The monsters are the men who refused to die, even when death came for them. My friend was one of them. And there were many more. He leaned on his cane, breathing heavily, his old body shaking. But his eyes never lost their fire. Another cadet raised a hand slowly. His voice was quiet. Sir, then all human legends are true? The veteran smiled bitterly. True, child, even the darkest tales you've heard are only half the truth. The real battles, the real sacrifices are too heavy for words. Legends make them easier to tell. But the truth is harder. The truth is pain. The truth is blood. He began to walk again, pacing slowly across the front of the classroom. Each step echoed like a drumbeat. You hear of soldiers who fought to their last breath? I buried them. You hear of warriors who held the line against impossible odds? I stood beside them. You hear of men and women who gave everything so that one child, one family, one stranger might live. I saw them fall. His voice grew quieter but sharper. You call them legends. I call them brothers. I call them sisters. I call them friends. A heavy silence spread across the room. The cadets could not move. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed of their earlier laughter. The veteran finally placed the blood-stained metal back into his jacket. He patted it gently, as though it were a living thing. Then he looked at the cadets again, his eyes full of sorrow. This is the truth you wanted. You wanted to know about human legends. Now you know. They are carved in blood. They are written in sacrifice. They are carried by men like me, who still wake in the night hearing the screams of the fallen. His voice broke for a moment, but he straightened quickly, refusing to show weakness. Never mock human legends again. Because every story carries a grave, and every grave carries a name. The cadets sat frozen, their chests heavy, their hearts shaken. None dared to laugh anymore. None dared to speak. The silence was the greatest respect they could offer. The veteran stood tall despite his limp. His scars glowed in the dim light. His eyes, though tired, shone with fire. He whispered the last words of his lesson. Remember this. Humans are not strong because they never fall. They are strong because they always rise. And with that, he turned away, his figure like a shadow walking out of history itself. The cadets could not move. His words would haunt them forever. The hall was deathly silent. The cadets could still feel the weight of the veteran's words from the previous days. His tales of sacrifice, courage, and unimaginable battles had broken their laughter, replaced it with fear and awe. The old human veteran stood before them again. His cane tapped softly against the floor as he moved forward. His one living eye glimmered like a distant star, and the scarred side of his face seemed to tell a story of centuries. Today, he began, voice low and steady, I will tell you why the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Not because we fought small wars, not because we survived against impossible odds, but because when humanity stands together, nothing can stop us. The cadets leaned forward. Their tails twitched nervously. Their wings shivered. They knew this story would change everything they thought they knew about humans. Human fleet. It began at the edge of the Orion Rift, the veteran said. The Krell had gathered their largest armada. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. They intended to end humanity once and for all. They believed we would scatter. They believed we would surrender. They were wrong. The veteran's voice grew rougher, thick with memory. We had barely 500 ships left. Many were old, patched together from scrap. Some had broken weapon systems. We had no reinforcements. And yet, When the enemy approached, humanity did not flinch. We rose. Every man, every woman, every child who could fight stood ready. That day, the stars themselves would witness our madness. The cadets' eyes widened. Hundreds of ships, patched and old, standing against a galactic armada. It seemed impossible. The first clash, the veteran paused, letting the image settle. The first clash was brutal. Our ships were torn apart by their plasma fire. One of my friends, Corvin, was aboard a cruiser that exploded within seconds. I watched the flames from my command ship. His screams still echo in my mind. The cadets flinched. Some whispered prayers. Others could not look away. But we did not stop, the veteran said. Every destroyed ship became a shield for another. Every fallen soldier became a spark for the next to fight harder. We used every tactic we knew, and some that we invented, in the heat of battle. We hit weak points. We tricked their commanders. We made them fear us before a single human set foot on the battlefield. The cadets leaned closer. Even the teacher's jaw was tight. The ground fight. They believed their soldiers were invincible. The veteran continued, "But we were humans. And humans fight in ways no one expects." The veteran described the boarding of a massive Krell battleship. 100 of us climbed aboard their ship. We had knives, makeshift grenades, and courage enough to burn the stars. They laughed at us. Their soldiers were taller, stronger, armed with plasma blades, but we moved fast. We struck where they could not see. We ran, we jumped, we screamed. And we killed. Every corner of that ship became a nightmare for them. By the time reinforcements arrived, we had already taken control. And when the Krell realized their ship was lost, they hesitated. Again, the cadets shivered. The image of a small group of humans taking down a giant warship seemed unreal. Yet the veteran's tone made it believable. The turning point, the final day of the battle, he said, voice dropping low. The Krell gathered their entire fleet. They unleashed everything. Every weapon, every soldier, every terrifying machine. They had. The galaxy itself shook under the fire of their armada. He paused. We were cornered. Our numbers were tiny. Every human could count the seconds left before we fell. And yet, we did not give up. The cadets held their breath. Our commanders ordered a final push, the veteran continued. Every ship fired until it could fire no more. Every soldier charged until they could not move. And then something happened. Something they never expected. He paused dramatically. We fought with cunning, with ferocity, with madness. Our ships, though fewer, moved faster. Our soldiers, though smaller, struck harder. We became chaos incarnate. The Krell could not predict us. They could not stop us. And for the first time, they feared humanity, not just our numbers, not just our weapons, but our will. The human spirit, the veteran's voice softened, almost a whisper. I saw men throw themselves into the path of enemy fire to save others. I saw women dive into exploding ships to disable their engines. I saw children, yes, children carry wounded soldiers to safety while under fire. The Krell had never encountered such madness, such loyalty, such courage. And they did not understand it. They could not understand it. They could not stop it. The cadets sat frozen. The veteran's voice, rough and raw, painted images more terrifying than any nightmare. Humanity's victory. By the end of the battle, our fleet was shattered, yes. Many were dead, many more wounded, but the Krell had lost more. Their ships, their soldiers, their pride, they all fell before human cunning and bravery. They retreated. Across the galaxy, the word spread. Humans cannot be beaten easily. Humans do not die as expected. Humans are legends because they survive against impossible odds. The cadets' eyes were wide. Some leaned forward. Trembling. The veteran's eye glowed brighter. And that, he said, voice hard, is why the galaxy learned to fear us. Not because we were the biggest, not because we had the strongest weapons, but because we refused to die. And we never fight alone. Humanity fights together. Humanity survives together. And when we stand together, nothing can stop us. The lesson. He took a deep breath, scanning the cadets. You mock us, laugh at our legends, and call them myths. But now you know the truth. Human legends are built on sacrifice. Human legends are written in blood and fire. Human legends are carried by survivors who refuse to forget. And the galaxy, every species in it, knows that to face humanity is to face the impossible. He tapped his cane against the floor. Remember this lesson. It is not enough to fear strength. Fear will not save you. Respect the human spirit. Respect their courage. And never forget, humans rise again and again, until even death grows tired of following them. The final words. The cadets sat in awe. Their previous arrogance had melted. Their laughter had vanished completely. Even the teacher could not find words. The veteran leaned on his cane, looking at the cadets one last time. His voice dropped, soft but filled with weight. Legends are not born in safety. Legends are born in fire, and humans are forged in fire like no other. Remember that. Carry it with you. And if you ever face humanity in battle, know this: what you face is not just a soldier, not just a fleet, not just a race. You face willpower itself. You face what it truly means to survive. Against all odds. You face human legends. With that, the veteran turned and walked out. His steps echoed, a sound heavier than any cannon fire. The cadets did not move. They would never forget what they had heard. And in that silent hall, a new understanding was born. Humanity was not just a story. Humanity was a force. Humanity was unstoppable.